Hi, everyone. One more round of applause for Andrew. How great was that film? Yeah, so we'll get to ask you a couple of questions about how this film came to you and how did it change from your initial inspiration to make it and kind of where it ended up.
Yeah, so Nalini is my aunt, and so I grew up with her as this kind of shiny superhero figure in my life. It seemed like she could fly, she could do anything. But I knew her, as sort of the public version of Nalini, who is so big and so boisterous and incredible. And it wasn't until 2020 when I thought and approached her about making a film about her fall and recovery, thinking that would be about recovering back to where she was before the fall, that we started talking over Zoom, and she sort of opened up about kind of her whole life story and just the complexities and challenges she had overcome, and also this idea that she didn't come back to the stage that she was in before, and that she's still figuring herself out, which I so connected to, and I just became this aunt-nephew sort of dual exploration of kind of who we were as people. And so with that, and when she shared some difficult family, about the trauma, I wanted to try to find a way to put that into a film, and we ended up finding a focus on her relationship to trees, from childhood to adulthood, and now in this kind of new version of herself, and this trees being kind of the through line that kept her going in different ways throughout her life.
And it's so incredible, the shots that you got, and I know you climbed some trees yourself doing this.
Yeah, it was scary, but I did. The nice thing is her method of climbing is not hard. Anyone can do it, but to do it and get as high as she gets, that was very scary to me. And I accidentally got off when I was trying to get up on the wrong branch a little bit early before she came up, and she said, "You should actually be up there, not there." But it was a happy accident because I was able to film what is my favorite shot of her in the film, which is looking up at her alone on that branch in Figueroa, her favorite tree, kind of at peace in the canopy. And so I'm glad I got off on the wrong branch, even if it was a little precarious.
And how did you approach the tree element of the storytelling? It's so important, as we know, to the work that many people in the climate field are doing today, and also obviously in her research. How did you think about capturing that part of the story? Yeah,
Nalini's work comes at trees in so many different ways, scientific, academic, but also artistic. She has, attached paintbrushes to canvas and let a tree blow in the wind and kind of paint a picture, and, with Treetop Barbie and with all these different ways of trying to kind of bring eco-fashion together with, all sorts of different mediums. It was a lot to figure out how do we fit her relationship to trees into the scope of a short film. And so really where we landed was her experiments with what grows back, where she is now stripping away plants up in the canopy and coming back and seeing what grows back. Is it the same? Is it different? Is it stronger, weaker? And what if you disturb that plot again the second time? Does it grow back? Does it have more resources in the seed bank to grow back something new or old? And so we really loved that as a metaphor for where Nalini is as well, with her injury, with her life experiences, and in terms of sort of the bigger picture questions that we're all facing about disasters in the world and what grows back. Will they be will they be the same? And how do we internalize what's okay about the newness of kind of what's to come?
Yeah, I think for me that's one of my favorite parts of the film, is just that thought process of asking those questions, and the questions she even asks in the film about trees that you in your life maybe have a relationship with, and why. How did that work on you as a filmmaker, making this, and obviously very intimate relationship with the protagonist, and how do you feel changed from the process?
I mean, absolutely. It was such an exploration for me in so many different directions. As a filmmaker, as a family member, the most sort of primarily difficult part was dealing with the sensitive subject matter of the abuse and figuring out whether that belonged, whether she was ready to share that, and in what way she wanted to share that story, and how it connected as well to the other themes of the film. We had to kind of have a lot of conversations about what was just for us and what was for the family and what was beyond, because these were very new conversations, very challenging things to kind of unearth and then figure out how to kind of put back together. We thought of it a little bit, me and Nalini thought of it like if Nalini is a tree, you sometimes have to kind of dig out the roots. There's damage in the roots, and let light shine in and air breeze through in order for there to be healing of those roots so that the crown can prosper. And, I felt the same way in terms of opening up with her about my own experiences, that just talking about those difficult things was difficult, but also could help with that healing process, and understanding that you weren't going to just solve it all and kind of pat your hands and walk away. But the one other thing is that just the way Nalini approaches trees with this sort of childlike wonder, that really rubbed off on me. And she asked that question, picture your favorite tree, and what did that tree mean to you? That's something I try to think about and invite other people to as well, because I think that's such a simple but meaningful question to ask.
I love that you brought up the healing element of this process. It's one of the things, so at the Redford Center, we always look for projects that we feel can have impact in the world, and there's lots of different ways we think about impact, but I think one of the most undervalued elements of filmmaking and storytelling when someone's really been through trauma is the healing process of just the telling and sharing their story. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you felt that the film was in some way a vehicle for Nalini and for your family in terms of the healing process, and if you'd be willing to talk a little about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think Nalini has found, when we were making the film, it's hard to know how other people are going to receive it, and especially if there's something that you're sharing that you feel shame about or uncomfortable about, and this was new territory for her. Like I said, she was used to being a public figure who is always kind of, in the know. She's the expert, and this was a whole new side of her. And what happened very early on is that we had a series of interviews. I interviewed Nalini, and she talked about her experience with abuse from her father. And soon afterwards, I asked if I could interview my own father and her brothers and sisters about the same topics and similar topics, and she said yes. And I did, and after that interview with my father, who's her brother, she had felt as though he hadn't believed her about the abuse before, and through the process of the film, he, after having this interview, gave her a call and said for the first time that he believed her. And that was so meaningful for her to have that just acknowledgement that, that wasn't invalidating her. That validation, that early validation, I think, set her up to feel more comfortable kind of moving forward, and that there is value in vulnerability. And at so many points in her stories of her life experiences and in our process of sharing the film, the most sort of meaningful and vulnerable conversations have been able to happen outside. Like, this is where Nalini feels at home, amongst the trees. And that's been the case in many sort of difficult conversations in her life. And so as much as possible, to decompress or to have those conversations, going for a walk with her or with another family member and having those difficult conversations amongst the trees has made a lot of difference.
We hear that a lot we do a lot of work with films on this subject of nature connection, and we often hear about it being just a very neutral place, a non-judgmental place. Like she said it so beautifully in the film. There are so many themes. You did such a beautiful job weaving together so many storylines and story elements in a very cohesive way. And I think a question I would love to ask is, what are your hopes and dreams for this project, and how do you see this in the sort of bigger scheme of what we're up against with climate and environmental change right now. How do you see this film fitting in?
Yeah, well, we've been very lucky through the life of the film to be supported very early on by the Redford Center. It made the film possible, and it helped guide us in a way where we were thinking about impact throughout, and kind of impact that was very specific to our film and may or may not sort of overlap with other films, but just in the sense of wanting to allow people to sort of picture themselves finding their own version of kind of healing through nature and their own sort of connection to whether it's a tree from growing up or something else. I think one thing I hope people take away is that they can look at the way Nalini has brought her love and passion about trees from childhood into her adult life. And we want myself and anyone watching the film to find that passion, that creativity, that spark from childhood of what made them feel at home, and bring that with them and try to find that in their adult life. And I think for Nalini, with trees, that has allowed her to really maintain a lot of optimism in the face of tremendous strife of deforestation and forest fires and many other things where climate change is affecting, certainly the rainforest and beyond. And Nalini has this sort of saying of trying to always stay on the knife's edge between despair and hope, and that is her way of moving through, the sort of climate anxiety that can be debilitating and can make you feel like maybe it's not even worth trying on the despair side. But you have to still make sure that you're paying attention to the fact that these are very serious things that you need to be acting on, with the hope side, which is that things, there's a way, there will be a way. And so her balance, I think, comes from the balance she has with her relationship to trees, where it has painful memories. She has had falls. Trees were an escape. Trees were, a place where she found safety as well and found joy and exploration. So finding that balance between hope and despair. And also, I think on a personal level for Nalini through this journey, I hope people can take away, the idea that we're all valuable inherently, that we have power, and that regardless, right, of our external achievements or validation, that we deserve, home, safety, love. And so I hope that this film can say that to Nalini, that this film can say that to me and to people watching as well.
And how has this film changed your life? I know this film is out on PBS right now, for anybody that wants to tell your friends and family about it. It was shortlisted for an Oscar. It's gotten a lot of attention. We've done a bunch of screenings.
Yes.
You've been doing walk shops, if you want to talk about that. What has changed for you through the process of making this film?
Yeah, I mean, before making this film, I wasn't sure if I could, on a personal level, sort of claim myself to be a director. And this made me sort of feel like I can be a filmmaker, and anyone that is making a film is a filmmaker. It's been a really amazing journey, mostly for the in-person interactions and experiences that we've had because of it. Nalini's been at many screenings, and seeing people come up to her and respectfully, in a way that she's comfortable with, open up to her about something that touched them, or they're inspired by the way she approaches things. That's been so meaningful to her. And for me, we've been able to do a number of different screenings, as you mentioned, including a walk shop where we watch the film and then we, if we can, go out amongst the trees and offer sort of pose some questions, some writing prompts, some thought exercises about your relationship to nature and how you want to engage with it and how you've experienced disturbance and recovery and what your third state might be in your own life. And I think that's been really meaningful to see how people can take something from the film and reflect it back on themselves and have their own, unique and personal connection to nature and what that means for them. And so that's been wonderful. And yeah, just being here and hearing when people laugh at the Playboy story or her climbing in her office, that always makes me happy.
She's so full of life. Anything else you want to share before we complete?
I think I just want to thank you, and I want to thank you both and Bloomberg for having us and putting on such an amazing program. I'm excited to see the rest of the films that are happening today, and it feels like a really lovely space that is so well intentioned. So that's all I'd like to add. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Andrew.